Well, we have reports that Senate leader Chuck Schumer did the Barry Goldwater, met with Joe Biden, tapped it on the shoulder, and said, please, we're begging you, get off the ticket. You're killing us. Oh, it's happening, my friends. And we'll give you all the details. Also, Cory Mills is a veteran of the military and a sniper. He knows what's going on when it comes to the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. He has many, many, many questions for the Secret Service, obvious questions and very specific questions that only he can ask. And CNN, they weren't really pleased with those questions. We're going to show you that entire interview as more scrutiny on the Secret Service intensifies. And last night, a big night at the Republican convention, lots of important speeches, but probably none more important than from former candidate and now future member of the Trump administration, Vivek Ramaswamy. And we're going to break that speech down bit by bit coming up right now. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Thank you for watching across all of our platforms right now. A huge influx of new subscribers after yesterday's extravaganza, and we welcome you, and we love that you're here, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or X or Facebook, or if you're watching after the fact, please throw some comments in there so that we know you're there. I love seeing all the interaction between the people who are watching either live or after the fact yesterday. That's what makes us live. We love that. We thrive from that. After all, we are Town Hall. And we love the town hall that we created right here, the virtual town hall. And please leave those comments and like and subscribe and share our video with everyone you know so that we can continue doing the work that you want us to do at the level you require us to do it at. Yeah, that made sense. I'm going to go with that. So Axios is reporting on a meeting between Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Other than President Trump, he's the highest ranking Democrat in Washington, D.C., at Joe Biden's. Did I say President Trump? Damn it. I did a Biden. I have mashed potatoes for brains. Axios is reporting on a meeting between Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and President Joe Biden at Biden's Delaware home. Now, Chuck Schumer has acknowledged that this meeting took place. Here's the headline. Schumer had good meeting with Biden in Delaware. Hey, Senator Schumer, how was that meeting you had privately, one-on-one, just the two of you at Joe Biden's residence in Delaware? You know, after the debate where his brain melted and malfunctioned, and then after the whole series of interviews that he's given where he doesn't quite seem to get the fact that everyone wants him to step down because he's going to kill the Democrats' ticket this November. How'd that meeting go? Chuck Schumer's answer? It was good. End of comment. Hannah Nichols at Axios reporting Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer traveled to Delaware on Saturday to meet with President Biden in person, calling it a good meeting, but offering no tangible sign of support for the embattled president. Yeah, see, that's the thing. He said it was a good meeting, and this would have been a great opportunity to say, and I'm more committed than ever to making sure Joe Biden wins 4 more years because he's the only man who can be our nominee. He's the only one to beat Donald Trump, and we can't wait for 4 more years of Bidenomics. Would have been a great opportunity for him to say that. But he didn't. See, sometimes in these reports, what isn't said is just as important, if not more important, than what is said. Good point, Danny, over on Facebook. Schumer needs to go too. Aren't we sick of all of these, octogenarians running our lives? Why it matters. I love it when Axios tells us why it matters. It was the first known face-to-face meeting between Biden and Schumer since the president's disastrous debate more than 2 weeks ago. Bullet points. I sat with President Biden this afternoon in Delaware. We had a good meeting. That was the statement. That statement was noticeably cooler than his previous insistence that I'm for Joe. It comes after Axios reported on Thursday that Schumer was privately signaling to donors that he's open to a Democratic presidential ticket that isn't led by President Biden. Okay, so that's your Axios headline. And it's important. Now, why it matters. I'm going to go a little bit further telling you why it matters that Axios will go, because the Axios doesn't want to get too far over their skis, because Axios, like the rest of the media, are trying to keep their powder as dry as possible because they're still trying to figure out the best way to go here. Understand, these liberals in the media, their job is not to report information to you and give you real analysis. Their job is to defeat Donald Trump and to defeat Republicans. And they still don't quite know exactly the best way to go about doing that. Some of them think it's with Joe. Some of them think it's with Kamala. Some of them think it's with, some other candidate. They haven't gotten their crap together yet, and they're waiting for somebody to lead the way. Most of them, though, have determined that Joe Biden has mashed potato for brains and that there's a serious liability putting him out there longer and longer and longer. And so they're trying to basically figure out how best to cover up for him. Now, that leads us to our pals over on the Ruthless podcast. Yes, sir, the Ruthless Pogrom, as they call it. They're broadcasting live from Milwaukee. And Kevin, I'm thinking I might want to start wearing the sunglasses for the show. What do you think? I know that Smug wears them all the time, comfortably Smug there on the Ruthless Pogrom. But all of them are wearing shades, and I think it looks cool. And I've decided, Kevin, I'm going to do that too. Are you okay with that?
Well, after you mistook President Biden for President Trump earlier, maybe we should get you some aviators so you can really fit the role.
Because I, in fact, too, have mashed potatoes for brains. Thanks for that. Thanks for, if you're going to do a callback on this show, don't do a humiliating one that embarrasses the host, Kevin. All right, so here they are. And these guys, just if you don't know who the Ruthless guys are, they got a great podcast. It's very fun. It's very influential. In fact, I've appeared on it. That's all you need to know. These guys are all former Senate staffers. They all know people in the Senate at the highest levels. A couple of them, I think, worked for Mitch McConnell. So, of course, they have great relationships and inner workings with Schumer's staff as well. So watch what they told you about that meeting with Chuck Schumer. The good meeting. Yeah, it was good. All right. It was great.
Schumer may have driven out to Delaware to have a personal meeting with Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that?
So that
this
part
is news being broken. This is actually serious.
Yes, this is actually serious. And because we do have some sources.
We have many.
And there are a lot of things that media sources can't report because it hurts Democrats.
Yeah.
So he drove out there.
Mm-hmm.
Tell what happened.
Well, I think you may know more details than I do, but it's my understanding that he got in his car and he got in the car that was driven for him out to Delaware to have a private one-on-one audience with the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
No staff.
None. And what happened when he got there?
Well, it's our understanding that he was going to lay out the case for Joe Biden and why it was very, very difficult for his party to survive this election if he's still in office, or at least still running for president. And, look, knowing Schumer, it's like a poll number thing, and he's talking about, he's just got that whiny thing. But I guarantee you what it was to basically say, like, you got to step away.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Yeah.
He's not going to do it unless Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi run a full-scale public campaign to remove him from. And even if they do,
I'm not sure he does.
There's no guarantee they could win. I mean, they're not getting him off.
It says a lot about the current state of our politics and the news cycle these days.
Yeah.
That the United States Senate Majority Leader goes to the home of the President of the United States and asks him to step down.
This is without precedent.
It's a blip.
People don't,
this is
we're telling you're hearing this for the first time.
This is like a Nixon Goldwater situation. And it was only publicly reported. Oh, we had a good meeting.
Yeah.
Really.
Nobody's digging into that.
Yeah.
Can't dig into that. That might hurt the ticket.
Yeah.
Well, they're not sure. The media's in this state of they're not sure which Democrat it helps and which one it hurts, so they stay quiet.
Yeah.
Here you go. Actually, I didn't realize they went into that part of the issue there. But as I just told you, that the media, they don't know what to do with this whole thing, right? But this is exactly. Have you noticed that nobody has followed up with Chuck Schumer? He put out this statement. We had a good meeting. What did you talk about? What was the meeting about? Why do you even have to meet right now? It's certainly not about any legislative agendas between now and Election Day. So why else would Senator Schumer be meeting with Joe Biden? The answer is obvious. It's to assess his viability for the ticket, because Chuck Schumer knows that if he stays on the top of the ticket, the way things are right now, as of next January, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He loses the Senate. He loses it bigly. All right. Do you know, when you break down the Senate races this November, the Republicans have a victory in the bag right now, flipping a Democrat seat to Republican. That's West Virginia. It's Senator Joe Manchin. He is stepping down. So now it's up for election. And that is a state that Donald Trump has won by like 25 points the last two elections. The Republican will win that seat. That's flipped like that. There's other seats that are very strong in favor of Republicans right now going down the map. Do you know, as you look at the numbers, look at the polling, and look at the chances for Democrats to flip a Republican seat, do you know what their best chance is right now? Kid you not. When you do the analysis of the Senate, the best chance Democrats have to flip a seat this November is in Texas with incumbent Senator Ted Cruz. That's their best chance. And I'm going to go out on a limb right now. That's not going to happen. Not by a long shot. Ted Cruz will be reelected in Texas. So they're in trouble. And Chuck Schumer knows they're in trouble. That's why he went and had this meeting. And that's why I believe the reporting and sources that the Ruthless team has here, that whole meeting was Chuck Schumer saying, Joe, you got to go. Now, as they just said, I don't think that's going to make an impact. They said, unless Obama and the Clintons both come in. But, I've been thinking, we've been analyzing these rounds of interviews and speeches that Joe Biden has engaged in to try to assure Democrats that he's just fine. And have you noticed a talking point that he keeps repeating? He keeps saying that he has been the most successful president in recent history, that nobody expected him to be able to do everything that he did, all the legislation, all of the great things that he's done. He has been the most successful president since Roosevelt. If you're Bill Clinton, how do you take that? If you're Barack Obama, how do you take that? Let's be real clear here. Joe Biden has literally done nothing since Republicans won the majority in the House in 22. So that means Joe Biden is claiming that in 2 years, with a majority House, majority Senate, he was able to accomplish more than Barack Obama in 8 years and Bill Clinton in 8 years. How do you think those guys with enormous narcissistic egos, how do you think they feel when they hear mashed potato brains say that about his record? What did Joe Biden do? He passed through a COVID relief bill that actually exploded inflation, right? He did that in the first 6 months. Then he did this ridiculous infrastructure bill that sadly 15 Republicans stupidly helped him pass. And then he did the Inflation Reduction Act, which he claims was this groundbreaking climate change bill, which basically amounted to throwing billions and billions of dollars to electric vehicle policies. And the net result is we've got 5 new power charging stations somewhere around the country. And you're Barack Obama, like him or not. And Barack Obama's sitting there saying, dude, I passed Obamacare. You're going to compare what you did in 2 years to what I did? Yeah, like Obama and Clinton have got to be insulted by this despicable lying maniac claiming that he did more in his 2 years than any president since Roosevelt. So I don't think they're really on Joe's side right now. Now, add this story. Chuck Schumer going to beg Joe to get off the ticket. Add to that another breaking development this morning. Again, I want to keep pointing out, Joe Biden continues to have these meetings with members of Congress, with people in the media, with donors, to convince them he's okay, to convince them that he's going forward, to convince them that they got to stay on the train with him. Think about that for a second. if everything's solid and you've got all this support and you're the darling of the Democrats and everyone's rallying around you the way Joe claims is happening right now, why do you need to keep having these interviews with Lester Holt and George Stephanopoulos? Why do you keep needing to have these special private meetings with influential members of Congress to shore up your support? If the support's there, you're golden, dude. Keep charging for it. But no, he keeps having these meetings. And here's the latest out of the Texas Tribune reporting on a Zoom call. Let me read it for you. Right before the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, a group of moderate Hill Democrats, there are moderate Hill Democrats, held a tense Zoom call with the White House to express their concern about Biden's ability to win and their ability to win, should he tank and take them down with him. Quote, the call was even worse than the debate, which, by the way, I want to remind you, was 2 weeks post-debate. This was this Saturday, right before the assassination attempt. Even worse than the debate, one of the participants told me. He was rambling. He'd start an answer, then lose his train of thought. Then he'd just say, whatever. Actually, I don't believe that. I think what he says is anyways. That's his little tick, his vocal tick. When he loses his train of thought, he just says anyways. He really couldn't complete an answer. I lost a ton of respect for him. This is from one of the Hill Democrats participating in this Zoom call. A second participant, zoom in right now. If you're only half listening, focus on my words right now. Listen to this. A second participant in the call confirmed the characterization. Quote, the president was rambling, dismissive of concerns, unable or unprepared to present a campaign strategy, and had a particularly troubling exchange with Jason Crow, congressman from Texas, I believe, saying to him, quote, tell me something you've never done with your Bronze Star, like my son, unquote. That's according to a member of Congress. Had the campaign, where did we just lost? Where did we just move? Oh, all right. I missed the quote stops right there. Think about that for a minute. Joe Biden getting into an argument with moderate Hill Democrats on a Zoom call, challenging Jason Crow, saying, tell me something you've never done with your Bronze Star, like my son. Again, raising the specter of his dead son and flashing a Bronze Star as if he died in combat or something, which he didn't, but Joe Biden thinks that he did. And then questioning the patriotism of Jason Crow and challenging the validity of his Bronze Star. And by the way, doesn't this sound 1,000% believable? Because this is the Joe Biden we see all the time. You remember in 2020 at an Iowa town hall when somebody started challenging him about his son's corruption. He said, oh, you want to have a push-up contest with me? I'm going to take you around back. I'm going to be, you're a lion horse-faced pony soldier or whatever the hell he says. All this crap. This is what Biden does. This sounds exactly like him. Hang on. Here you go. Further down into the article, the campaign did not, however, dispute this next part about Crow and his Bronze Star. In a video of the Zoom that I was able to view, you can hear Biden chastising Crow, who asked about the importance of national security to voters. Quote, first of all, I think you're dead wrong on national security, the president says, the emotion at times garbling his words. Yeah, I'm sure it was the emotion that garbled his words, not the, mashed potatoes. You saw what happened recently in terms of the meeting he had with NATO. I put NATO together. Name me a foreign leader who thinks I'm not the most effective leader in the world on foreign policy. Tell me who the hell that is. This is Biden screaming at his own Democrat caucus. By the way, these are the people that he's trying to impress right now and prove that he's mentally stable and competent to be president. And he starts getting into a screaming match with them. I go, come on, I'll show you. I'll take you behind the barn and I'll beat you up. Tell me who that is. Tell me who put NATO back together. Tell me who enlarged NATO. Tell me who did the Pacific Basin. What does that even mean, did the Pacific Basin? Tell me who did something that you've never done with your Bronze Star, like my son, and I'm proud of your leadership. But guess what? What's happening? We've got Korea and Japan working together. I put AUKUS together. Anyway, it's always an anyway. Things are in chaos, and I'm bringing some order to it. And again, find me a world leader who's an ally of ours who doesn't think I'm the most respected person they've ever and then he trails off. That was on Saturday, right before the assassination attempt. And by the way, according to the article in the Texas Tribune, had the assassination not occurred, as many as 50 Democrats on Capitol Hill would have publicly asked for Biden to step down. This was at the same time Chuck Schumer was meeting at his home in Delaware, at Joe Biden's home in Delaware, begging him to get off the stage. Oh, guys, it's happening. It's really happening. And again, last night, in front of a friendly crowd, the NAACP, Biden gave yet another teleprompter scripted speech where he was supposed to prove to everyone that he's just fine. Want to take a look at how it went? Okay, let's do that.
Not a joke. And Kamala and I have a constant fight. She says Howard's the best. I said Delaware State's the best. But that's where I got my start.
That's Joe Biden, the president of the United States, whiter than Casper the Ghost, claiming that he got his start at Delaware State, a historically black college, saying that he's constantly arguing with Kamala Harris, who went to Howard University, also a historically black college, about how his is better. Delaware State's better. That's where I got my start. Of course, did not go to Delaware State, in case anyone was wondering. But that's okay, because it's the NAACP audience, and he can say whatever he wants to them, apparently. Clay Travis, our pal over there at Outkick, he put together a montage of how many times Biden's brain malfunctioned, and he couldn't complete a thought. And again, I want to remind you, this speech is on a teleprompter. Take a look at this montage.
I know you say, Joe, you may not have a Congress. Well, guess what? You all told me I couldn't pass the Inflation Reduction Act. You all told me I couldn't face it. Anyway, we did it. We're going to bring rents down, as I said. We're going to build 2 million affordable homes. And cap rent increases of 5% a year so corporate landlords can't God. Anyway, I don't want to get going. I'm going to get very upset. But there's gouging America. And by the way, not only saves lives, it will save taxpayers. Just what I did on the first round on dealing with Medicare. It saves the taxpayer $160 billion because they don't have to pay these exorbitant prices to these anyway.
How many times does he have to do that before we realize he's not overcome with emotion? He's actually not got a functioning brain. He can't complete or finish a sentence, so he just ends it with anyway. And this whole, I'm going to really get worked up. He spent the entire speech shouting. It's the old Simpsons meme. Grandpa Simpson, old man, screams at cloud, right? But one part of this speech in particular I want to draw focus on. Again, reading from a teleprompter. Watch.
We're going to bring rents down, as I said. We're going to build 2 million affordable homes. And cap rent increases of 5% a year so corporate landlords can't God. Anyway.
All right. Again, he was reading, but he still couldn't figure out what to say based on the script that was right in front of him. Remember with Lester Holt, he just said the other night, I'm on the horse, man. Come on, what's the matter with you? How many times do I have to give a speech where I don't even have to rely on a teleprompter and everything's fine? This is with a teleprompter, what you're seeing. But what was that there? We're going to cap rent increases by 5%. Now, this is an unconstitutional Marxist idea that they've been floating for the last week because they're trying to appeal to the ultra left-wing liberal Marxists, because if he just gives them whatever they want, then they won't make a move on him at the convention to try to take him off the ticket. So now he's just opening up the goodie bag. And this one is outrageous. It's absolutely anti-free market, anti-capitalism, anti-logic, anti-constitution that he, as president, will cap rent increases. So any private property owner cannot increase the rent of a tenant of theirs by more than 5%, regardless of market conditions. It doesn't matter. We're going to control the market because we're the central government. Because when has that ever failed? But forget about whether you agree with this policy or not. The policy is that he's going to cap rent increases at 5%. That's a pretty easy thing to remember. I'm going to cap rent increases 5%. Cap rent increases 5%. I heard this the first time, and I've never forgotten it. It was about a week ago when they first floated it. Okay, he wants to cap rent increases at 5%. He just said it in the speech, reading it from the teleprompter. Later in the speech, still reading from the prompter, he refers to it again. But for some reason, he has trouble reading it this time. So instead of actually being able to draw from his memory and say, okay, maybe I have trouble reading this, but I know my policy. It's capping rent increases at 5%, right? That's easy. I don't need to be able to read that. I can just say it because I'm a normal functioning human being with a brain about, the size of a at minimum 6-year-old, because a 6-year-old would be able to remember that. Watch what happens when Joe Biden's brain breaks again.
The idea that corporate-owned housing is able to raise your rent $300-400 a month or something, under what I'm about to announce, they can't raise it more than $55. Yeah,
that is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Okay, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, because I want you to watch his face. He does the whole lean forward thing. I'm going to say this, and it's going to be part menacing, part intimidating, and part impactful. But either way, I've learned over my 50 years in Washington, and if I lean forward, I look really badass because I'm Clint Eastwood. So he squints his eyes, and he's going to say this thing so impactfully, and then he can't remember his own policy. So watch him, because the pause here is incredible. Watch the deer in the headlights look. Actually, it's like, possum in the headlights, because he's got the... Watch him forget his own policy, and then he just pulls $55 out of his butt instead of 5%.
$55.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And you got to love the NAACP audience, because they know, everybody knows that it's 5%. And then they hear $55 and they're like, $55? All right. Yeah, let's go. Oh, what a fool. I can't wait to see how Karine Jean-Pierre handles this, by the way. Karine, yesterday the president said that they're capping rent increases at $55. Is that the policy now? No, I'm gonna let's take a big picture look at this. The president did say $55, but of course the policy is 5%. And what the president was saying was that if your rent is $550 a month, then the increase will be capped at $50. Well, no, actually, Karine, that's 10%. Oh, that's right. What I meant was it's $1,100 a month, then it will be capped at $50. He was giving an example of what the 5% cap would be. Well, Karine, he didn't say that. He just said it would be capped at $55. Okay, so I'm going to refer you to the Department of Housing and Urban Development so that they can give you a fuller explanation of this. But no, we don't need to be referred anywhere, Karine. The policy has been 5%. Now he's saying $55. Which is it? That's the end of today's press briefing. More of Joe Biden proving once again that Chuck Schumer is wrong when he's begging him to step down. All those moderate Hill Democrats are wrong. He's got his act together, guys. Here's more.
Look, folks, think about this. My state of Delaware, if not many don't know my state. My state of Delaware has a Delaware River runs up along, it's jagged. But at the top of the state, there's a half moon. And it goes up along more oil refineries on the other side of that half moon, workers looking area, than anywhere in the country, including Houston. And guess what? The wind blows southeast. We had the highest cancer rate for the longest time. But you know who's affected? Fence line communities. You know who the fence line communities are? Black communities.
That was terrific. That's Joe Biden at his best right there. I want more of that. I want Joe Biden to run for office between now and November doing nothing but geography lessons about Delaware and screaming about black people dying. That's what our country needs right now. He's the unifier we've been praying for. Seriously, if you're a Democrat, if you're in the House of Representatives, you're in the Senate right now, and you're watching this shit show develop on a daily basis, are you ready to jump out a window, right? You know, all of them are looking at the rules. It's like, hold on, can I get off the ticket now at this point? Can I decide to retire? What happens? Does the governor replace me? What happens? It's so ugly. Here, a little bit more. Let's go more.
And one of my best friends who used to, when I was a lifeguard in the projects, he was his nickname is Mouse.
Mouse.
And one of my best.
He's got a new imaginary friend. We always thought it was Corn Pop, right? But no, it's Mouse, everybody. Or we know what cartoons he watched before he gave the speech, and it was just sort of stuck in his head. There's more. There's more. This was not at the NAACP, I don't think. I'm not sure which remarks these were, but more examples of how Joe Biden has his act together and everything's fine.
Like America First high-speed rail line. That's going to take you from Las Vegas to Los Angeles in 2 hours. Create over 30,000 jobs. And guess what? Save billions of tons because of pollution. Because people, all the studies show, you can get from point A to point B in a train or a vehicle the same distance. You take the train. I
mean, he seems 100% together to me. That's Joe Biden at his best right there, as he'll tell you. And my favorite part was at the very end of the speech when it was decided by somebody to just end this thing before it gets any worse.
God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You know your love keep on lifting higher, higher and higher. I said your love keep on lifting higher and higher. Now once I was downhearted, disappointment was my coat.
We can do this, folks. We're the Democratic Party. We can do it.
And you know he never showed his face again. That's why your love.
That's some vim and vigor right there. Did you notice how quickly? I mean, they had their button ready on the music the second he gave his God. But look at the face. Look at this. This is what they've got. This is what they've got. And look at how quickly they're like, the button was like, please finish, please finish, please finish. Watch how quickly the music comes.
God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You know your love keep on lifting. You know he never.
All right. Well, there you go. Oh, by the way, one other thing. After his speech, they did the whole "let's bring Joe to a store" or something, a Wawa or whatever, and meet with the people. So they did that. And what did Joe do? The second they brought this decrepit, failing old man with mashed potatoes for brains into a store with regular folks, let's see what he did.
You helped bring the money. How do you? Thank you.
Oh, my God.
How are you? Good to see you. You checked me out the other day. Recently here. Then you checked.
Yep, that's right, guys. There was a little girl there, and he went right in for the sniff. Didn't hesitate. There was nothing stopping him. No one standing in the way. And inexplicably, the parent of this child, who clearly doesn't pay attention and realized that Joe Biden is in the room, was not there to do any sort of, maneuvers to protect their child. So he went right in for the sniff. Watch the beeline he makes when he sees this little girl there. Go look at his eyes. Look at his face. You see, he's spotted her. He scoped her out, and now he's going to go right in for the sniff.
You helped bring the money. How do you? Thank you. How are you? Good to see you. You checked me out the other day. Recently here. Then you checked me out.
And now he won't back. I mean, it's like, I know people are like, oh, he was posing for a picture. No. He's stuck. Look at the girls finally like, okay, can we just gently move this little girl away from this man and back up? It's a great. Remember how when he was running for office and the whole Me Too thing came down, and he had to give a speech, little remarks to Instagram that said, "Listen, I know in the past I've been guilty of invading people's personal spaces. That's because I come from a different era of politics, but I've learned my lesson, and I'm done with that." Yeah, trust me. Once you become president, you can do whatever the hell you want. You do whatever the hell you want. Look at that. The sniff. It's all about the sniff. It's getting right in her face. Why does he have to be so close to her? Oh, this poor mother. Okay. All right. Enough. The bottom line on all of this is that Joe Biden is as together as he's ever been. He is more cognitively aware as ever. And listen, only a man who has his full faculties can get on a Zoom call with a fellow Democrat in Congress and start screaming at him and challenging him that he hasn't done anything with his Bronze Star. Because, the whole purpose of having a Bronze Star is to then use it for political leverage or something. It's an amazing report. Hey, can your savings weather an economic storm? Think about what you've put away for the future. Inflation can render cash worthless. Real estate can crash like it did in 2008. Economies built on a mountain of debt can fall like a house of cards. There are very few physical assets you can invest in that can stand the test of time. Gold has withstood as a valued form of money for millennia. It's why people are flocking to it now and why Birch Gold is busier than ever. Through a little-known tax loophole, Birch Gold lets you convert a retirement account into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And the best part, doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. To learn more, text Larry to 989898 and claim your free info kit on gold. Again, can your IRA or 401k weather an economic storm? If not, call the people I trust at Birch Gold. Text Larry, Larry, to 989898. Secure your savings today. We still have questions, tons of questions. I mean, serious questions about the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump this last Saturday. And it's amazing how little we're hearing from the FBI or the Secret Service. The fact that they rarely do any sort of press conferences or press releases of any information that they've gathered. Whatever we're learning from leaks or we're learning from local news reporters in the Pittsburgh area. But we still don't have information about what kind of gun was it. We don't have a picture of the gun. We don't have definitive numbers on the number of rounds that the attempted assassin fired versus how many rounds were fired by the snipers. The question after question after question still lingering and still hanging there. But thankfully, there are a lot of experts who are stepping forward and saying, listen, I look at the lay of the land. I look at what was done here, and I've got a ton of questions that the Secret Service needs to come clean about sooner rather than later. And one of those men is Congressman Cory Mills of Florida. Now, Congressman Mills appeared on CNN yesterday, and we're going to sit back and watch a ton of this exchange because what he said during this interview is absolutely mind-blowing. And the kind of thing that, after the JFK assassination, it took like a decade for people to start asking questions about what happened that day and about the investigation and what was wrong with the investigation after the fact, right? Cory Mills is watching this transpire right before our eyes right now, and he is already going there. Take a look.
I look at all of these things and I look at different videos where an assailant will pull a firearm on a law enforcement officer. And the first thing they do is they immediately pull and draw and mitigate the threat and the risk. I ask why the local law enforcement officer did not do so. The other thing is that when you set up an advanced team, I keep hearing this about the perimeter elements.
Yeah.
The perimeter is actually established by your threats that are in the area. So if I don't have any threats outside of 100 yards, okay, fine, I can cordon off a certain area. But if I have a building 160 yards, perfectly adjacent to the stage, That's an obvious threat, especially with an elevated position that has overwatch. That's a sniper's paradise. And, we talk about eagle nest. You also have, which no one talks about, but the water tower.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's not a failure on the ground for sure, but 100%. Also a failure in advance?
I think it's a failure in advance. I think it's a failure to have the counter snipers to be able to establish their range fin and their sketch maps.
I also heard we've also learned that local snipers were stationed inside that building. At the time.
I haven't heard that piece of it yet, but that doesn't necessarily make sense unless they were actually in a window which was backed off. Because a lot of times you get yourself in there. Sometimes you expose your rifle in a way to try and do a force protection or a show of force that actually stops things. Others are actually more tactical where they'll sit back a little bit. But a sniper for the law enforcement is only trained to shoot about 75 yards, unlike your counter sniper teams that are on set. But here's my problem. In having done this for so long, they always say the adage of ignorance is bliss, and I think that's true. I've done thousands of advances. I've done thousands of counter sniper operations with our teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
But wait, talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this right the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional?
All right. Now, this is where things get very interesting. And this was a fascinating sort of ramp up and build up to that question from the CNN host saying, what do you mean intentional? And as we let Congressman Mills sort of lay this out and describe all of the things that look intentional with regard, very deliberate, let's say, with regard to what was done, what wasn't done, in terms of the layout and in terms of the precautions the day of this assassination attempt, it's important for everyone to realize, and of course the CNN audience did not get the benefit of this, of course, because CNN sucks. Cory Mills is a retired member of the famed 82nd Airborne Division in the United States Army, and Cory Mills is a sniper. He is an Army sniper. So he understands better than anyone collecting a paycheck at CNN the lay of the land here and exactly what happened and what didn't happen to prevent it from happening. All right. So as he lays this out, and sadly, I think Cory Mills assumes that the person he's talking to and the producers at CNN and even the CNN audience has an understanding of who he is and what he knows and some basics about this. So as he goes through this, bear all of that in mind, please, as you see these two brilliant intellects butting heads a little bit, because she immediately becomes very uncomfortable with where Cory Mills goes. And I have a feeling it's not just her, but she's getting screamed at in her ear by the producers back in the control room, saying, you can't let him say that. You can't let him say that. Jump in there. You can't let, because watch what happens.
I mean, an intentional failure on the part of...
No, I wouldn't say an intentional failure on the part of, but I got to just, I sit here and I scratch my head. You don't want to be the conspiracist. You don't want to be the person.
I'm telling you, because that's what it's leaning toward.
No, I know. And that's the issue, is that you walk this fine balance of, you're not trying to be a conspiracist, but you look at it and you go, how could this have gone so...
But it's one thing if someone on the street says it. It's not, I mean, you, Cory Mills, member of Congress, former sniper, you saying it, I mean, it makes my eyebrows go up. When you say you're walking the line on this, intentional what?
It almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Now we're attempting to kill you and take.
Whoa. Let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at all the different possible capabilities. One of the things as a military member, one of the things as a person who's run in the special operations communities before, one of the people who's actually done this is that you look at all potential analysis, right?
Donald Trump and his team have said,
No, I agree.
Dial it back. Do not blame this on Joe Biden.
Oh, well, actually, I didn't say Joe Biden, to be completely
Who's the
clear.
they then? Let's be very specific.
Well, that's what the investigation has to do. Was it local law enforcement that had made the mistakes? or was there something to it? Was there other types of things that we need to be analyzing or looking at and providing analysis? My point is that when something's so significant, you're talking about something that hasn't happened in decades, right?
I totally,
But my point is this, from a perspective of someone who's actually conducted these are not difficult advances. This is not like I'm putting together a stage placement and a tight shot. This is about looking at your surroundings. What is my green, yellow, and red route, which is your routes out in case? What is my actual elements that I need to be looking at as far as mitigating threats or risks or increased levels? Where's my range fan for the sniper that says, okay, here's my 100, my 200, my sketch. Here's an area where someone could shoot. Because here's my thing.
So you're
Let's
saying,
just say it's a Royce element.
You're saying,
Can I just jump in here? What's the point of having Cory Mills on there and asking him questions about this if you don't just let him talk? And she's constantly interrupting him because I assure you, again, there are people yelling in her ear. Oh, we can't let him say these things. You've got to jump in there. You've got to challenge him. You did. It's like you asked Cory Mills on, an ex-sniper, a man who knows what he's talking about. And you are so hell-bent on maintaining this veneer, this facade that everything's fine. Oh, sure, mistakes were made, but it was just incompetence. And I guess we've reached the point now, and we've got more on the Secret Service. And when I say more on Secret Service, I'm, of course, referring to the director of the Secret Service because she does appear to be a moron. We're going to play that for you in a moment. But we've reached the point now, it seems, in reflection and analysis of the events of July 13th and the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, that we, the American people, have a choice right now. We have to choose that there was negligence at play here, or it was nefarious. Negligent or nefarious. There are no other choices. This was incompetence, or there's something very dark at play. And Cory Mills, as a person who is involved in the investigation, is keeping his mind open to either. The journalists in CNN, they refuse to keep their minds open to either. And one must ask why. All right, we'll go back to this.
This is so basic that how big the screw up was, that's what's leading your brain down this road.
That's exactly right in a way.
Look,
but because here's the other thing. Let's
Tom
just say
Emmer
it's a
was just on.
resource.
Tom Emmer was just on with me, and he said very specifically to me, I wrote it down. He said very clearly, it is too early to be talking about who is at fault and who is responsible.
That's why an investigation is necessary.
Is it not dangerous? Is it not reckless to even be throwing around the word intentional right now?
So to question things as we do an investigation is recklessness, because at that point, then should we never question anything? My point is this.
I'm not trying to be PC. My point is, in the political environment that we are in,
what would it have taken? Right? Let's just say that resources was limited. Let's go with that as a reasoning. So how many times have you seen where they just put a police car inside of a parking lot with not an officer in it and just leave the lights on as a deterrent? Why couldn't that have been a simple thing that was placed in? Why couldn't we have said to the owner of the actual AGR company, hey, look, we don't want to disrupt your business, but we also want to make sure your parking lot is clear of people trying to park in there for the rally. Why don't we place an officer there? My point is that this was too easy of a solution. And when I think about 160
I'm just so uncomfortable with even having
I'm uncomfortable with having to say it. Trust me, my whole point is that I would like to look at this and say, where was the mistake made? How can we correct it in the future? Why was this actually done? But I think that this does warrant a J13 type of commission where we can actually look at it and say, let's investigate and find out why this happened so it doesn't happen to anyone. This is not about a political thing. This is about, we had an attempt to assassinate a president. We really need to understand what a serious matter this is. And this was a milliseconds or millimeter difference between this being an attempt and this being an assassination. And I can tell you, at 160 yards, okay, just to give you an idea, your off-the-shelf rifle shoots what they call 1 minute of angle at every 100-yard line. So at 100, it's 1 inch, 200, 2 inches, etc. So now you're talking about 1.6-inch grouping capability of a rifle off a manufacturing line. Your average human being, because we used to do this in understanding sniper training, you're 20 inches shoulder to shoulder, 40 inches head to waist, and you're 6'8" in your average head size. These are kind of the dimensions that you look at as an average. You're talking about a 1.6-inch grouping for multiple shots on a basic rifle. We're blessed, and I do believe in divine intervention, so I am a person of faith. I can't explain one. I hope that it was a corrugated roof and maybe he slipped off on one of the edges of the corrugated roof or he was rushed. But the whole thing, I think, just needs to have a better explanation so that the American people and everyone can feel comfortable.
And I think that's why people are saying pump the brakes because we've seen conspiracy theories, honestly, on the right and the left. I just said Donio Sullivan on that it's already going like wildfire. This is the kind of political environment that they're saying it's too hot and people are jumping to too many conclusions.
Well,
that's why I am so uncomfortable.
As a military member, one of the things that we do is we what if scenario everything in the world, right? That's
I
how
know,
we
but I don't know. I'm just saying
when
if
I
it's
look at
the what ifs that you talk about maybe in an investigation and the what if that you are presenting on live television. I don't know. It's just
so listen, I'm a public official.
Yes.
Anything that I do, anything that I say in the public. I don't try and hide it in private. I think that the American people need transparency, accountability, and accessibility to the elected officials, not to try and hide behind what we want to look at. And I also think that if the American people know that we're questioning these things as well, it puts them at rest to at least know, why aren't they at least looking into this? Why we should look at every single situation which is of this significance. We should look at it from multiple angles to ensure that nothing is left out, nothing could be potentially claimed as being covered up.
Yeah.
We need to have more transparency to the American people, and I think that's what everyone deserves.
But a full investigation.
Full investigation.
Before anyone
That's right.
points at fault.
That's exactly right. And that's why I say I have not made an accusation of something. I just want to make sure we're covering our bases to ensure that we get a proper investigation at all levels to ensure this doesn't happen again and that our president can be safe.
Congressman, thank you for coming in. Thank you very much.
Yeah, she's real happy that the congressman came in there, isn't she? Couldn't you tell? It's amazing to me still after all of this time how clueless professional journalists happen to be. If you think about what she was saying and what she was conveying there in that interview, is that she feels that it's her job and her network's job and her profession's job to protect the American people from hearing such discussions. She would prefer that such discussions happen behind closed doors so that we, the American people, never get wind of it and never know. Because that's supposed to keep us from jumping to conspiracy theory conclusions. Think about that logic for a moment. No, we can't have transparency. We can't be discussing these things out in the open. The American people, they've got to be protected from such things because we can't trust them to hear that. So do it all behind closed doors, reach your conclusions there, and then come out and present it to us. Then everyone will be, secure in the knowledge that they've got the truth delivered to them. Which, by the way, is exactly how conspiracy theories start. And they're still clueless of that. I mean, I ask you, after seeing that exchange, do you feel better or worse knowing that a sitting congressman is asking these questions? That a sitting congressman is leaving all options open and wants a full, transparent, and open investigation into any possible scenario that may have led to the events of July 13th. Does that make you feel better? Or the woman who says, hey, let's not say any of those things. That makes me uncomfortable. We've got a heated political climate right now. If you say things like that, those wahoos out there, they're going to go nuts. So let's protect them. Let's protect all of us from those crazy people. Which is, by the way, exactly what makes people crazy. The news media, their profession, has now turned into this sort of pretend superior intellectual gatekeeper whose main function is to not find out information and then deliver it to you. Their main job is to keep you from getting information. Certain information, the information they decide you can't handle and shouldn't hear. That's what you just saw displayed right before you. And anyone who looks at the events of July 13th and then has an expert sniper on to talk about it and decides that it's best to not have this conversation while you're actually having that conversation. I don't know what business they're in, but they're not in the business of news, information, and journalism. That's what you just saw. Meanwhile, very real questions continue to be asked to the director of the Secret Service, the person who was handpicked by the Biden administration to run this very important organization. And one part of her interview with ABC News from yesterday has gotten a lot of attention and raised a lot of eyebrows. Maybe you've already seen it. Let's play it.
should that roof have been secure, period.
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, you know, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, you know, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
A sloped roof. We can't have somebody on a sloped roof because of safety concerns. You know, it's an OSHA thing. You know what I mean? And I guess based on what I saw from some of the Secret Service agent, some of them were wearing pumps, and so they might slide. ABC News was helpful enough to actually show us what roof she was talking about. That's the slope. I mean, I've seen a more severe slope on a wheelchair ramp heading into a building to accommodate the disabled. Look at the slope she's talking about. That we'd be very, very concerned about the safety of having somebody on that sloped roof. Meanwhile, the actual roof where the actual Secret Service snipers were, right behind President Trump during that speech, has a more severe incline, a more sharper slope than that sloped roof. This is, I mean, she's just lying. She's grasping at straws. She's just you. Is what she's doing, because she's just trying to cover her ass, or she's trying to toe the line because she's been told to toe the line. But a sloped roof, that's what we're going with now. That's what we're going with, guys. A sloped roof. There's more.
Was every element, every part of his, from the intelligence to the counter assault team, to the detail agents, to the shift agents, I mean, every element, top to bottom, of the advance in the operation, was every element increased after you learned of this credible threat? What we increased.
Real fast, the credible threat they're talking about is that it was revealed yesterday that the FBI and other intelligence agencies learned of an assassination threat from the government of Iran trying to assassinate Donald Trump, which, by the way, just political observation. If Iran is so freaked out that Donald Trump might become president, I think that says a lot about who Donald Trump is and who Joe Biden is. You know, they tell us that Donald Trump doing away with the Iran nuclear deal ended up actually helping Iran and putting them on a further path to get a nuclear weapon. Remember that message that the Obama Biden people told you? Oh, we got to have the Iran nuclear deal, the joint agreement on nuclear weapons, because that will keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And if Donald Trump gets rid of it, well, that's going to give Iran carte blanche to get a nuclear weapon. That's what they told you. And if that's the case, why is Iran trying to kill Donald Trump and keep him from being president? Okay, that said, here's the Secret Service director's response to a question. What did you do with the information that Iran had a plan, a plot to assassinate Donald Trump?
This credible threat.
What we increased was what we felt was appropriate for the former president and for that particular event on that day. We have been increasing the assets and the resources and the staffing that we have been providing to the former president since he was a presidential candidate and then the presumptive nominee. That's what I can tell you.
That sounds like a no.
I am not saying a no at all. I'm saying that we have continued to increase the resources that we've been providing.
She's just a disaster, absolutely hapless. A little bit more. And again, no press conference from the Secret Service. No updates at all from them about the investigation and what they know and what they don't know. They're just tropping this woman out. And look at her face. She's like, how dare you even challenge me and ask me these questions? Don't you know who I am? I used to provide security for PepsiCo, okay? I used to protect sugary beverages as they were being transported around the world. Don't you know who I am? How dare you challenge me and my credentials? And then more information that was revealed yesterday afternoon, early evening, about more real problems at the Secret Service and very real threats against Donald Trump.
Aaron, there's been some developments as the investigation has progressed. You know, what the investigators are telling us is, as far as a motive, a manifesto, the reasoning behind this, the suspect is still a blank slate. But what they have developed is a lot of the background about what happened that day. They know that he went to his employer at the nursing home where he works as a dietary specialist before this and said, I need Saturday off. I have something important to do. But he told his coworkers, I'll see you on Sunday. So he changed his days off, presumably for this. We also understand that when he got to the fairgrounds where this rally was being held for Donald Trump, the first thing that puts him on the radar of security people is near the magnetometer area where they're screening people in. He's carrying in his hand a rangefinder. It's a device that looks like a small pair of binoculars, but it's used by shooters to measure the distance when they're setting up a long distance shot. Because he didn't have a weapon, that would not have prevented him to go through security. But they did flag, what does he have this in his hand for? At that point, they told people, keep an eye on this guy. But then he leaves the secure area, the staging area, and he doesn't turn up again for some time until the crowd says there's a guy crawling up the roof and it appears he has a rifle. There is an eerie moment in here, Aaron, where he's taking the rangefinder and he's looking through it at the counter sniper positions. And one of the counter sniper positions is looking at him through the scope. At this point, there's not a gun in the picture, as I understand it, but they're saying he's looking at us, looking at him. Then when people alert the police and they try to come up the ladder to get him, and he confronts them with the AR-15 gun, they dive for cover. And then a moment later, he opens fire. But a lot of this sounds very spread out. The end of it happens very quickly. The last piece is the search of the car. As we reported last night, 2 remote-controlled IEDs, remote-controlled bombs in the car. The remote control for those devices found on his person on the roof, according to sources. 3 fully loaded magazines with nearly 100 rounds, a bulletproof vest. So it raises the question, did he expect to escape from this? And if so, what was all that intended for? What was to happen next? Questions that are still open in the minds of these investigators.
Thank you to Media Research Center for the clip. And yeah, these are all questions. By the way, all of this gleaned from inside sources that are leaking and talking to the media, nothing officially from any official person. We haven't seen a picture of the gun. We haven't heard any more details officially from anybody, which again, you know, not to contradict or pick a fight with a journalist, a professional news anchor on CNN. But when the government continues to be tight-lipped and not deliver regular updates and information, and it's only trickled out through leaks anonymously to the media and to reporters, and that's how we learn information, well, that actually makes us even more suspicious. And this is how conspiracy theories happen. Not by having a congressman who's a trained ex-sniper from the 82nd Airborne Division of the United States Army sitting and saying, yeah, I think this needs to be looked at, and I think that needs to be looked at, and we need to leave every option open. That's what makes us think that this is going to be handled properly, not what we're getting right now. And then there's this, and this is literally just in from about 20 minutes ago, Fox News reporting. Here, take a look.
We have just learned that the Trump rally shooter, Thomas Crook's parents were looking for him in the hours leading up to the shooting. We're now told they eventually called law enforcement to report that Crooks was missing, and they were worried. And they also were told, those parents are now being cooperative now with authorities, but they gave them the heads up that something's going on with our son. We are worried. We don't know the texture or the details of their concerns. So in other words, well, were they worried that he had a gun? Were they worried? You know, what were they worried about? Were they worried that he was going to try to attempt to kill a sitting president and then go ahead and turn into an assassin and kill another person and injure 2 others? It was an attempted assassination on Trump, but he managed to murder anyway. Are we talking about that? What were they giving the cops a heads up about? This is the first time we are hearing this. We'll stay on the story and we will bring you the details, updates as we get them. Crook's parents were looking for him hours ahead of the assassination attempt.
Yeah, we're learning more and more and more and more, and it keeps trickling out. And it's good to bear in mind right now and keep reminding everybody that the people who were charged with protecting former President Trump, the Republican nominee for president, the stories that keep coming out and the claims of budget shortfalls and stretched resources, none of it makes any sense. I mean, honestly, this federal government spends more money than we've ever spent in our lifetimes, in our history. And you're going to tell me that it finally comes time to tighten the budget and make some decisions about money that won't be spent, and the decision is made on the security detail for Donald Trump. The decision, by the way, made from the very government that continues to say that he must be stopped at all costs from becoming president. If this is the case, I would love to learn, full transparency, if they are making budgetary decisions because of strained resources in the Secret Service Department, that how that has manifest in President Biden's protection and his detail. My understanding is that the Secret Service was deployed to protect President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine while he was at a conference in Utah on the same day as this assassination attempt. If we have resources for that, surely we can have resources to protect Donald Trump. But you know what they say about government spending? How you budget and how you prioritize that spending, that is your policy. It tells you what's most important to you. And I'm afraid we're learning exactly what is and isn't important to the Democrats who are running this White House. All right, last night at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, we saw some pretty stirring moments. For my money, some of the most stirring moments were from the everyday Americans who were telling their stories about how their lives have been devastated by crime, violent crime, criminals who have been let back on the streets by Democrats aligned with this White House, who decide that they're going to re-engineer our society, not by following the law having to do with criminal justice, no, by ignoring the law, not prosecuting people and leaving them out on the streets. Add to that the devastating criminal impact of our open border and the criminals who have passed across our border without any repercussions, then wreaking havoc with sexual assaults and murders of American citizens. And we are living in a dystopian time under this president. Those speeches from those everyday Americans impacted, their lives devastated by Joe Biden, they will stay with me for a very, very long time. That was a main theme last night. The other main theme was a litany of Republican candidates who ran in the primaries this year, who fell short of getting the nomination, who now went out of their way to stand on that stage and say, Donald Trump has my full support. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, there was no love lost between DeSantis and Trump. There were a lot of names being called. There was a lot of vitriol between their two passionate bases. But Ron DeSantis stood on the stage and say, I am with President Trump. Nikki Haley, of all people, who it appeared would not endorse Donald Trump. She stayed on to the very end, as long as she could in the primary process. She had devastating criticisms of Donald Trump. She sounded like a Democrat toward the end of the primary process. She stood on the stage and let the world know that she has given the full support and full endorsement of Donald Trump. This is how party politics is supposed to work. What we saw in 2016 and 2020, that's the aberration, with butthurt Republicans walking away from their party, claiming that they're the real true Republicans, and that's why they're going to support Hillary Clinton. Okay, make that make sense. This time around, you're seeing a Republican Party more unified than ever. And the most impactful speech of the former Republican candidates for president came from this man, Vivek Ramaswamy. Watch this with me, will you?
Love it. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's good to be back in Milwaukee. This time last year, I was a candidate for U.S. president, and I'm proud to say that I achieved the impossible, which is that most of you actually know how to say my name by now. So thank you for that. It's good to be back. We're in the middle of a national identity crisis right now. Faith, patriotism, hard work, and family have disappeared, only to be replaced by race, gender, sexuality, and climate. But we're not going to win this election just by criticizing the other side. We're going to win this by standing for our own vision of who we really are. What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? It means we believe in the ideals of 1776. It means we believe in merit, that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why we will seal the southern border on day one. Thank you. It means the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not unelected bureaucrats in the deep state. These are not black ideas or white ideas. They are not even Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They are American ideas that we fought a revolution to secure. And the man who will revive these ideals in the United States of America is your next president, the 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. If you want to seal the border, vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump. If you want to reignite the economy in this country, vote Trump. If you want to revive national pride in this country, vote Trump. If you want to make America great again, vote Trump. But there is one more reason I'm going to ask you to vote Trump, and it's the most important one. It's the one the media won't talk about, but it's the truth. Donald Trump is the president who will actually unite this country, not through empty words, but through action. Because you know what? Success is unifying. Excellence is unifying. That's who we are as Americans. That's who we've always been. To those of you watching this at home tonight, I'd like to deliver a message that the media doesn't want you to hear from the Republican Party. Our message to Black Americans is this. The media has tried to convince you for decades that Republicans don't care about your communities, but we do. We want for you what we want for every American. Safe neighborhoods, clean streets, good jobs, a better life for your children, and a justice system that treats everyone equally, regardless of your skin color and regardless of your political beliefs. Our message to every legal immigrant in this country is this. You're like my parents. You deserve the opportunity to secure a better life for your children in America. But our message to illegal immigrants is also this. We will return you to your country of origin, not because you're all bad people, but because you broke the law. And the United States of America was founded on the rule of law.
I'm going to interrupt this just for a quick minute. It's hard for me to interrupt because I think he's so good, and I think he's better now than he was when he was a candidate in terms of delivering these types of speeches. And this was such a well-crafted speech and well delivered. But something occurred to me that I just want to share with you real fast. You know the old trope. I'm old enough to remember. Well, I am old enough to remember Republican conventions. I remember when I was very little. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And one of my very first political memories was the Republican convention in Detroit, Michigan in 1980. That's when they nominated Ronald Reagan. was a kid. I didn't pay attention to politics, but there was something about Ronald Reagan that I thought was, kind of cool, right? And I remember that convention because it was in our town. It was Detroit, for crying, and nothing ever happens in Detroit. What's the old line in about was it the Apostle Nathan who said of Jesus, what good can come of Nazareth? Nothing ever good comes out of Nazareth. Detroit is basically Nazareth. Nothing good comes out of Detroit. But it was a big deal. So I remember paying attention to it. And there's something about Republican conventions or conventions in general that I've always sort of watched. It's a thing. I'm a news junkie. I always have been since I was a little kid. So I'm old enough to remember Republican conventions of the past in particular. And I'm old enough to remember the George W. Bush convention. I believe it was the 2004 convention, where every night the keynote speaker on any given night was a person of color. And it was very obvious and very deliberate. Maybe it was 2000, where you had a Colin Powell. You had a Condoleezza Rice. You had it was so ham-handed and kind of clumsy, and it was so obvious that the Republican Party at that time was trying to put forward this phase of, look, we've got black people too, we've got women too. We're not just the party of white men. And whenever you have to go out of your way to do that and say, no, we got our, you look even worse because it's so obvious what you're trying to do. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember this at all? I remember like every night there was like this really prominent person of color or woman that they were just elevating and saying, here, see what we got. And I contrast this to, now we're 2 nights into the Republican convention. And I contrast that feeling with what we're seeing here. With it, they're not trying anymore. Republicans aren't trying anymore. They just are. If you look at the crowd, there's a good number of people of color in the crowd, of various ethnicities and various races in the crowd. It's a huge number of women in the crowd. And yes, we've got Vivek Ramaswamy on the stage, and we've got Tim Scott on the stage, and but it's not this clumsy sort of, hey, everyone, look, we've got, no, it just is. This is just who we are. And it's funny because now I think it's the Democrats who were trying hard. You saw Joe Biden yesterday. Well, I know what a black job is. It's the vice president. In other words, Kamala Harris is there because she's black, everyone. Look at us. Look at us. We're not racist, which, of course, they are. Their extra effort and their extra try hard on inclusivity actually points out the inherent racism of who they are. We have excellent people who are on stage doing excellent work and saying excellent things about our country, not through the lens of race and not highlighting their skin color. Their skin color is incidental and just an additional asset of who they are, but it's not the driving force of their message. We've reached a place now, the Republican Party, where it's really incredibly healthy, strong, and provocative for Vivek Ramaswamy to send the message that you just heard him send to black voters. And it's kind of cool. I like where we are right now. I feel really good about it. All right, a little bit more.
Our message to millennials, speaking as one myself. Yes, it's true. Our government sold us a false bill of goods with the Iraq War and the 2008 financial crisis, loading up our national debt that falls on our generation's shoulders, telling us that if we took out college loans, we'd somehow get a head start on the American dream, when it hasn't worked out that way. But we can't just be cynical about our country, because the United States of America is still the last best hope that we have, and we deserve a better class of politician, one who actually tells us the truth, even if it comes with some mean tweets from time to time. And our message to Gen Z is this: you're going to be the generation that actually saves this country. You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative. Say you want to get married, have kids, teach them to believe in God and pledge allegiance to their country. Because you know what? Fear has been infectious in this country, but courage can be contagious too. That too is what it means to be an American. And you know what? If you're at home and you disagree with everything I just said, our message to you is this: we will still defend to the death your right to say it, because that is who we are as Americans. We are the country where we can disagree like hell and still get together at the dinner table at the end of it. That is the America I know. That is the America we miss. We do not have to be ancient Rome. We don't have to be this nation in decline. We can still be a nation in our ascent, a nation whose best days, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, a nation whose best days are actually still ahead of us, still on our way to that shining city on a hill, that country where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, or how long your last name is, that you will still get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we will revive this November when we send Donald J. Trump back to the White House. Thank you all. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, come on. Come on.
Ladies and gentlemen,
are you not ready to just plow through a brick wall face first right now to get to Election Day? And I look at Vivek Ramaswamy delivering that speech in that room with that reaction, and I think to myself, Vivek and DeSantis and Marco and Doug Burgum and Glenn Youngkin and J.D. Vance and Mike Pompeo and Ted Cruz and Mike Johnson and Jim Jordan and Jason Hawley and I didn't expect to do this, so I don't have anything in my head that I've done. But that litany right there, just that right there, that's our bench right now as the Republican Party. Those are people other than Vivek who have run and won elected office as Republicans and are governing either as governors or as senators or members of the House of Representatives. Who have they got? I mean, they're scrambling. The best they can come up with, because they don't want Kamala, is Michelle Obama. And then Gavin Newsom, that's it? Fatboy Pritzker from Illinois? Gretchen Whitmer, the Wicked Witch of the East? I am really happy as a Republican right now about where we are and where we're headed. And I see Vivek Ramaswamy deliver those remarks at that convention, knowing that he is going to have some role in the Trump administration. And I'm feeling pretty good, not just about winning in November, but then governing in January. These are good times for us right now. And imagine that. Imagine that these are good times to be a Republican and to be an American. And we're just 5 days after the attempted assassination of our nominee. That tells you something. It tells you something about how the world turns and about how time develops and how events unfold. Keep the faith, people. Stay positive, stay focused, and don't let them drag you down, because that's all they've got on us right now. That's all they've got, is to drag us down and to divide us. And we will not let it happen. We've got way too much going for us. Tonight, J.D. Vance takes the stage. Tomorrow, Donald Trump takes the stage. By the way, I'm also told through sources that tonight, I'll give you some breaking news. Tonight will be the public political debut of Baron Trump. He will be taking the stage at the convention, and he will be delivering remarks, I believe, for the first time ever. This is going to be a great night. This is a great week, and we are in this to win this, and we are together. It's the only way we are going to win it. Thank you for watching today. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.